Cool. Day 100. So, is everybody enlightened? I think I mentioned this yesterday or the day before. There's a really powerful line from A Course in Miracles. It says, enlightenment is but a recognition, not a truth at all. And I've been kind of pondering that and just am wowed by the magnificence of human beings, the absolute, it's like it can't be spoken. It's so incredible. And to a great degree, so many live in a culture where they've been taught something totally untrue about themselves and just wholesale buy into it and live from that. And so our objective is to restore, is to bring that realization. Oh, the recognition. An absolutely magnificent created being made of this stuff called love, designed to express through a form that, when properly aligned, allows a full complement of power to come through. You know, if I've got a perfect TV antenna on the roof and I'm watching television and my signal's perfect, I'm watching Channel 4 and there it is, and somebody goes up on the roof and bends all the arms and turns the antenna backward, all of a sudden, I've got a lousy picture. Does the TV need to be enlightened? No. The signal needs to be straightened out. Actually, I've been doing some more writing about the into being quantum still point process and realizing that it's really, the core of it is all about alignment, all about bringing our energy systems into alignment so that there's a full complement of energy that flows through us, and that there are mental, emotional, and physiological blocks that inhibit that. And spent the last 50 years developing methodologies for bringing that instrument, the antenna, back into alignment, and therefore a full flow, a full complement of the energy that's really designed to run our human systems. And to do that, you've got to be a receiver. It's not contained within the structure. What's contained within the structure is the past. And energy systems don't bring through more energy by efforting and trying harder. They bring through more energy by aligning. And so it's all about letting go of the resistance, letting go of the blocks. And the Course in Miracles again says it beautifully. You need not seek for love. You need only seek, find, and I edit and add in there and release the barriers you've built against it. You are it. What you are looking for is what is looking. And the only thing that blocks that is the misalignment of the literal antenna structure and the misaligned beliefs about ourselves, the mind energy that we bought into, that simply needs to be forgiven in order to make the space for wholeness to show up. So if you remember the song, What's It All About, Elfie? Well, that's what it's all about. That's what we're here to bring into awareness and support for literally for every mind, heart, and being on the planet. And whoever that mind, heart, and being is, you know, what the world calls the good, the bad, and the ugly. Doesn't matter. The truth is we're all the same. Some expressions are a little cockeyed and need some correction. Okay, yeah, we all are at some point. Some are very cockeyed and need expression and or realignment, and maybe need to be isolated from society in order to bring about the safety of society and remove the dangers from those that are misaligned, but ultimately we're all the same. That's why it's such a tragedy that we have penal systems, punitive systems, out of a total and complete misunderstanding. Don't need penal systems in our world. Like, it's time for punishment to go, because every anomaly that we can point our finger at and say, that's bad, that's wrong, every anomaly is a result of a punishment of some form, an energy that simply never belonged in the human system. So the objective is to become vital enough to throw off what never belonged and open enough and aligned enough to bring in a full complement of energy from the state of being into our physiology. And everything else is just details. Who was it? I think it was Hillel, an ancient rabbi, who said, do not unto others that which you would not have done unto yourself, and do unto others that which you would have done to yourself. That's the sum and substance of the scriptures, and all the rest is commentary. Now, of course, he didn't make a space for the sadist in there, or the masochist. But we know what it means. And so the forgiveness process is the core tool for opening, embracing, and processing out what never belonged. The breath is the core tool for bringing in what does belong. And that's what we're here to facilitate. So breathing with you, excited to be here. And it'll be interesting to see where the conversation goes today. Ms. Jeannie, do we have anybody in the phone queue with a hand up, or anybody in the chat room with a thought for us?
It is all quiet on the home front.
All is quiet. Well, if you're out there in listener land, our call-in number is 563-999-3581. If you're listening on one of those stations where we can't see you, you can ask us a question. So if you call that number, 563-999-3581, you'll be listening to the show directly. And then if you push 1, that'll raise a hand, and you and I will be having a conversation, along with Miss Jeannie.
And we have a hand up.
Awesome. Let's go for it.
Miss Celinda, 541, you're on the air.
Welcome,
how are
young
you,
lady.
Dear heart?
We're rocking. I am. Aria is.
You're talking to the rock lady of Columbus, New Mexico, and halfway Oregon. It's good to be rocking. I love rock. They have so much substance to them and stability. Hard to move a big rock. It stands in alignment in place where it is.
Well, I'm very attuned to that idea. We had watched a video recently on Japan, and apparently, I don't know whether it's the whole country or not, but the kind of the sentinel for gardens is a large rock. And after seeing that, I went out and attempted to pick up a couple of rocks that were bigger than I was. I just couldn't manage, but I did get a good size one for the garden, so we have a sentinel up there. But yeah, they're definitely tough objects to move at times.
Yeah, it's sort of like in the Old Testament where it says to look up to the hills from whence cometh thy help. I think of that when I look at our mountain. It's there, like the rock of Gibraltar. Hello, who is that?
Hi, my name's Aria.
Hi, Aria. This is Celinda. How are you?
Good.
Good.
She just heard your voice and she wanted to say hi to you.
Well, I'm already gathering little items for your Christmas.
Thank you.
So I'm thinking of you, too.
Do you know I'm
Sweet.
having a brother?
Aha.
Her little brother is coming the end of August, 1st of September.
Oh, my. Well, that'll be a whole new adventure for you, Aria.
We already know its name.
You
We
know
already
its
know
name?
its name.
What
Do
is
you
it?
want us to tell you?
Yes.
Lincoln Elias.
Lincoln Elias. Wow. What a panhandle. Wow. What he gets to live up to.
Bye.
Isn't that sweet? It's
Bye.
like Aria Rain. Bye-bye. I'm calling because I just happened. Are you there, everybody?
We're loud and clear. We got you.
Oh, good. Or did I lose all of you?
Michael was talking about the big rock.
Right. I remember. The reason I'm actually calling is because I picked up my little local newspaper, one of the very few newspapers in the United States that is privately owned and not digitalized. It's a little newsprint every week. And in there was an article about a young woman in the neighboring valley who's probably 20 or so. And it was just basically a sharing of her testimony about how she lives her life in Christ. Only Christ was never mentioned. She just talked about love and about, and she's going to a Boise Bible College. And I just read that whole thing, and it was like the Aramaic Gospel.
Sweet.
It felt so beautiful. I thought, oh, my God, all of this, it doesn't matter. You cannot stop ruha when someone's heart with love or with surrender and trust, all of those prerequisites to being loved. And the language, for me, the languaging just like dissipates when differences dissipate when I'm coming from the heart, because I realize, as Tim was reading today, about coming from the heart 100% and from honesty 100%, the languaging is not up to me. Ruha is going to flow through regardless, and Ruha will make the kind of correction in reference to that person's mind, culture, understanding, spiritual walk. But it was so obvious that this young woman is totally surrendered and has given up her fear and says, it's all good. I'm always taken care of. I'm always safe. I always have the family of love around me. She might not use those words, but that's what she said. And I went, like, sit
Sweet.
down and get out of the way. So I wanted to share that. It really opened my heart. Yeah.
Nice. I can hear that in your voice. That's sweet.
Tears of joy.
Isn't it awesome that we can go into all different sorts of forms, and here we are just, holding hands and walking each other home.
Yeah, and then we get all identified with the forms. I know. Get all identified and twisted up with the forms. And what's important? What's it all about, Elsie?
Yeah.
Sweet. So I wanted to share that with you.
Awesome.
Just like open my heart.
Well, those heart-opening moments are pretty important, for sure.
I think that I have realized something about holding my breath that I never realized before. You know, there's a point when you hold your breath in awe. You know, you've gone out and something is so beautiful that you're at a still point. It's like that still point allows it all to come in an experiential way. And then you start breathing again. And I thought, not all of my breath holding, because it doesn't happen for long, you know. It's just like, and then I start breathing again. So I thought I'd share that too. Maybe it's sitting down and asking ourselves, what is really happening here? And how do we bring those two together where it's all beauty, you know, where we become aware, self-aware of being in a still point and letting it all just come up, whatever it is. So I thought I'd share that. That just came up right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that still point is an awesome space to be, for sure.
And I have to skate it, Michael, because I'm a mouth breather. And I have been having some issues of waking up in the middle of the night and being totally dry in the throat and realizing that I've been mouth breathing. And so it's like I have to surf this. I don't have to do anything, but it's like an awareness now. Oh, just stop, notice, and see what's going on.
Do you have sinus congestion?
Amazement? Oh, definitely. And that depends on, I go to Louise Hay. It depends. It can be reflected in things I eat and stuff like that. Like I know to stay away from dairy. There are certain things, and I don't do well with like the gluten grains. So I have to really modify those and be very aware. So I've been working both with my diet, my emotional state, and my forgiveness tools and blessing. So I've made quite a little morning energy drink here, haven't I? With all of the above.
I have a friend in Florida who has a healing practice in Sarasota, actually. A fellow I just went down to speak at his center back a few weeks ago, and whenever a new person comes in, the first thing he does is assign them a nasal cleanse program to cleanse the sinuses, because it has such an impact on the brain, such an impact on the lungs and throughout the whole body. And it's definitely a key place to start looking at what do I need to do to clean that out.
Because a lot of it has to do with the sinus drainage. When I was 3, I had my tonsils taken out. Well, you know what that means. They took out my adenoids, right? And then I had my appendix taken out when I was 14, and it didn't need to be taken out. I found out after the fact. And I'm wondering, I can ask you, it seems to me that the appendix could be part of the immune system.
Clearly, yes.
Oh, good. Okay. Then on my
clearly part of the immune system, and you know, if you bake bread, you know that one of the things you do if you're doing a yeast type bread is you keep a little bit of the dough from one batch to be the starter for the next batch, and that's what the appendix are.
The appendix are
when
what now?
They're the place where the starter dough is kept for the next batch of food going through to be digested.
Okay. Because
that's where the microbiome is held and released with each batch of food that goes through. You know, medicine, you know, having very little understanding of actually what causes health, is always looking for the disease, and thinking they're fighting an enemy and having to get rid of it. But the appendix is simply the place where the body stores the leavening for the next, the microbiome for the next batch of food that needs to be digested, and what organisms are needed, and you know, And unfortunately, if we live in a way that we're over-congested and that thing gets stuffed up. And
well, this is it. Go ahead.
Just means it's time for a good detox, not to start yanking organs out of the body as if they're useless.
Okay, I'm practicing not interrupting, so a lot of times I'll interrupt you because I have a funny thought, and now, so that's when I tell you go ahead because I just caught myself interrupt you. That's an interesting point that you bring up because if I get near yeasted breads, I'm dead in the water because of my yeast infections and things. And as I had mentioned to you, I think they're endemic. I think they came down my family line. Because of the symptoms I noticed in my mother and grandmother and things like that. The other thing is that even the sourdough breads, I finally convinced one of our little local bakers here to please make me 100% spelt sourdough bread. And she does, and I can handle that much, much better. I think there's another component beside it, so I'm convinced I'm on the right track with that, is that the grains now are so, they call it unifying grinding, and they're ground so small that I can't even find gram flour anywhere anymore that I found, locally from Azure, for example, and their mills are unifying. And I remember McDougall saying that if you eat the whole grain, that's the whole groat or berry. That's one thing. If you grind it into 100% whole grain, it's 60 times more assimilable by the body. And if you refine it, it's 600 times more. He made some sort of statistics like that. And I never forgot that. He said that 40 years ago. So, and then we wonder why we're gaining weight, Michael, as a species worldwide. One of the ways of adulterating our food, we can call it 100% whole grain, but if it's unifying and it's not even 60 times more, it's now something like 100 or 200 times more. What's happened to all of that fiber that was moderating our system?
Yeah, and you might, with the things you had done as a child, you might want to really, if it's not something, and I suspect you probably already are, really be looking at managing your microbiome, looking at getting the right kinds of probiotics and such to inhabit not only your gut but your sinuses. There are micro organisms that are designed to inhabit the sinus, and if we wipe them out with things like antibiotics and such and don't repopulate, then the sinuses are in trouble. So
Larry and I take no meds whatsoever. We do not even go. And I have pretty much stopped even going to alternatives for several reasons. One, because we almost half of our income is food through Azure and the local CSA and the farmers market and what we can grow. So we're living on a shoestring, and that's cool. I'm not complaining because we think we live very well. But there are certain situations that, for one thing, we want totally natural foods and herbs, and for another thing, like, for example, I take Zach Bush's ion product, but still, the budget will not allow for his recommended dosage because there's no room in it for that.
Yeah, you spend a fortune.
So what I'm coming from now is I have a physician inside of me, and that physician is telling me what I need to look at and how to proceed. And so I've got the physical with the diet. I've got the emotional with and the thought patterns with Louise Hay's book. I've got the spiritual with the Aramaic work and the blessings work and what Dr. Tim is doing in his. And that's my Trinity approach as best I can do now, and I'm really very happy with it. But I wanted to share, but isn't the word I want, and I want to share that with you and Jeannie and Tim and everybody on the show. That I'm really thankful to all of us, including myself, for the work that's being done. I made a commitment to love today, like we have for the commitment to self and commitment to others.
Right.
I created a little commitment to love, to the love that I am, and I'll share that with you. I can probably put it and make a document out of it and PDF it to you if you're interested.
Cool. Oh, awesome.
Yeah, it goes
Fabulous.
along with my blessings work.
Yeah.
Oh,
sweet.
And those questions.
Awesome.
And those questions that Dr. Tim read today, I was going check the questions about self-honesty, check all the way down the line. So I think I'll add those too.
Cool. Awesome. Well, you might want to, if you haven't touched anything, you might want to just check out nasal probiotics and try around with them and see if that helps with that congestion.
Yeah, was there anything else this gentleman did besides the probiotics? Anything that a self-help herbalist can do at home or anything like that?
Oh, he has a whole protocol and products that he sells for people to do nasal cleansing. So I don't know if he has a description of his program online, but let me just look up his website.
I do know that the meats don't work for me, and that egg works very well for me. That I seem to really need, especially egg yolk, surprisingly. That's what I really need, and not cooked. That's not cooked. The white is cooked. I don't do well with egg whites, uncooked. But basically it's vegetables, fruits, no juices. I never drink my calories. Doesn't work. And I've gotten to just about everything we have. The only canned item in the house is some canned salmon, and for Larry, because he eats meat. So that's where it's kind of at, and
cool.
I seem to be doing well. Well, when I stay on my program, my protocol.
Yeah. I don't have John's website here, but you might just Google Dr. John Lawrence, and it's spelled Lieurance.
Wow.
He has a practice in Florida, Advanced Rejuvenation. Actually, that might be his website, advancedrejuvenation.com, if I remember correctly. And you can Google him with nasal cleanse, and there's probably a descriptor of it on his website. I'm not sure, but I know that's part of his protocol with pretty much every person he deals with. And that's the starting point.
Well, I know it's all connected with the lymphatic system and everything. I'm very aware that it is a time for me to really integrate all of those parts of myself and work with all of them.
Awesome. Well, holding the space, young lady.
Oh, I am for you too as well, and so
accepted.
I'll be in touch.
All right, take care.
Even if it's energetically. Okay. Bye-bye.
There you go. All right, take care. Bye-bye.
And I put a link in the notes, and it's actually advancedrejuvenation.us.
advancedrejuvenation.us. Okay, well, I'll make a note of that so I've got it in my files here. Thank you, sweetie. I should have known you'd be on top of it. Awesome. So do we have anybody else in the phone queue with a hand up or anything happening in the chat room?
Nope. All quiet.
And is the advance, it's advanced as in past tense, or ED, right?
Yes.
Cool. Just making a note. .us. Cool. By the way, if anybody looks at John's website and wants to order any of his products, get back to us because we can arrange a 10% discount for you if you do anything with that. So let's move into then, if we've got nobody else with a hand up or chat room or questions in the app or anything like that, let's turn to page 67 in the Enlightenment book. And we're going to the beginning of John. And for me, this first passage is one of the biggest breakthrough passages in understanding and getting free of Greek misinterpretations of the scriptures, that this is one that is right at the foundation of it all. As at the very beginning, there was milta, is the Aramaic word. And the Greeks misinterpreted that word to mean word. But in Aramaic, the word milta, there are actually two translations possible for it. One is willed action. The other is mind energy. So in the beginning was the mind energy, and the mind energy was by God, Allah, by the Creator. The mind energy came from the Creator, and the Creator was that mind energy or that willed action. So this beginning was by the Creator. So we're coming into the realm of recognizing that the master organizing energy of the world is that action of the mind. You can go back and listen to Paul, and he had the insight, even though he didn't have the forgiveness tool, so couldn't break through his own challenges. You know, you remember he says, why is it the things I would do I cannot do, and the things I would not do are what I do? He's like, I don't get it. He didn't know how to enter and clean up his own unconscious mind. But he did say that we would be transformed by the renewing of that mind. And you renew that mind by removing the mind energy that does not belong. And of course, you have to make a determination of what belongs and what doesn't belong. For me, the best way of arriving at the determination of what belongs in the human system and what doesn't is to tap into its beginning before it was tainted by the world and see what the energy is that's there. And you do that by simply holding a newborn child. And having asked that question of thousands and thousands of people all over the world over the last several decades, virtually everyone's answer to that question is some variation on the theme of love. So the logical conclusion is that this energy system, before it was tainted, if it was based in love, then obviously the mind energy that's designed to fuel the system is that which is based in love, rather than that which is based in hostility and fear. And so all was by the Creator, and without him not a single thing came into being out of that which was. From him there came into being a perfect life, And this perfect life became the light unto all men. And so this life force based in love is designed to bring light into the mind and to keep the mind, and the mind energy that passes through us, comes from us, either received by us or emanates from us, is of a quality of that based in love. And when we lose that quality, then everything starts to degrade. So this light out of the darkness caused light, and darkness did not overcome. It's interesting, there are a lot of people who talk about, well, you know, there's darkness, but you've got to have darkness because if you didn't have the darkness, you wouldn't recognize the light. And that's just crazy. I mean, it's like a justification for quote-unquote evil. Oh, you see, if you didn't have the darkness, you wouldn't recognize light. No, excuse me. I can stand here with total light, and I can add more light, and I can add more light, and I can add more light, and I don't need one speck of darkness to recognize it. And the reason for that is because darkness is simply an absence of light. There is no positive presence in darkness. There is no positive presence, meaning existent presence, in what the world calls evil. Remembering that sin and evil are simply archery terms, sin representing the scorekeeper's notification that when you fired at the bullseye, you missed the bullseye on the target and therefore had sin. And the second notification, if you were off target altogether, then the notification was that of evil. It's just off target. So we're talking about absence, and the Greeks made a whole world up out of these demons and these, you know, as though there is a positive presence in the world that is off target, and there is no positive presence there. It's just pure, simple non-existence. And we are designed for existence, and existence is that of light. You know, when Yeshua says, I am the light of the world, he changes nothing but the pronoun when he says, you are the light of the world. He doesn't have a special light that is his or he holds, and a different one for you and I. It's exactly the same words are used. And where the Greeks interpret a certain passage as saying the only begotten, in Aramaic it's the first begotten. The first one who became fully cognizant of the light and overcame the darkness and became a way shower for how to achieve that result. And so darkness overcomes nothing because darkness is non-existent. That is, it's simply an absence of light. So then in verse 6, there was a man who was sent from the Creator, and his name was John, and this one came to bear witness, who would testify about the light, which every man would believe through him. So here's John. You know, he spent a lot of time in the desert, and the desert's just a code word for the unconscious. And you'll remember he was called the fore-runner of the Christ. The Christ being the mind in you that is fully awake to its light and no longer mesmerized by the darkness of a genetic or an historical past based in hostility or fear. And so each one must meet the fore-runner, and when one meets the fore-runner, that one is going to bring up each person's individual darkness. that is going to show the places that hold mind energy based in hostility and fear rather than based in love. And that is the required condition to become aware of and forgive, that is, remove what is based in generational darkness. So it was not his light, Nura, in Aramaic, but he was testifying about the light. For he was to be the light of complete truth and cause light for everyone coming into the world. So a condition that's available to every person, should one choose to turn their awareness toward that presence of light. In the world he was, and the world was by his hand, and the world did not know him. So there was enough of a voiding of the presence of that light that people paid so much attention to the mind energy based in hostility or fear that produced the darkness, that people just ignored what was there, became, I think, sensationally addicted to the energetic addiction to the hostility and fear. To his own he came, and his own did not accept him. And now to those who accept him, he gave power that they will be the offspring of the Creator, those who totally trust in his teaching. So while most of the world is looking for a Savior, what Yeshua delivered was a teaching that, and in Aramaic, a man and his teaching were one. So when we hear Yeshua, oftentimes we'll hear people quote, well, no one comes to the Father except for me, except through me. I am the way, the truth, and the life. And in Aramaic, to understand that a man and his teaching were one, the same way that a man and his Father were one. You know, he says, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father, and vice versa. So he was not talking about his personal self. He was talking about, here, I've given you the tools from which to free yourself from the hostility and fear-based world and to restore you to the presence of love. Now those that accepted him, to those who accepted him, he gave power. They will be the offspring of the presence of love. So once one taps into the presence of love, that once one taps into by aligning with the presence of love that we are, then that energy becomes literally a light to anyone who turns toward it. Unto them it came not from blood. In other words, you're not going to get this genetically, not from the will of the flesh, and not from the will of man, but from the Creator. And how do you get to getting this to come directly from the Creator? Where do you go for that? Well, Yeshua answers the question when they ask him what's most important in the whole body of the law, and he says, have Rachma, have this condition, have this gateway open in your mind that is the space where active love enters your form, and any intentions that would ultimately interfere with perceptions, any intentions based in hostility or fear, will be blocked by that activity of Rachma. So this mind energy, this willed action, milta, became flesh and dwelt among us. If you look up cell biologist Bruce Lipton on the internet and take a look, he's showing how in the laboratory when you think of thought, that thought becomes a literal molecule in your structure that's called a neuropeptide. And that neuropeptide circulates around in your structure until it finds a cell with the receptor site that matches, lands on the cell, and literally becomes chemistry in the cell. If there is chemistry in the cell based in hostility or fear, then the process of forgiveness needs to be entered in order to remove that form of what we would call chemistry, or more literally, mind energy. To removal. So Bruce Lipton showing precisely what's said here. The mind energy, or the willed action, milta, becomes literal chemistry in the flesh, and you get to live with it. And the way that it's spoken here in the Aramaic, and we saw the glory as if it was begotten from the Father, completely filled with this community, with this connection to love and righteousness. So we can step into a direct experience by following the protocol. The protocol, if you remember the meaning of the word protocol, it means, what do you have to do first? And Yeshua is very clear. Rachma is where it all starts. In fact, if you go to the passage where they ask him, what's most important in the law? And he says, have Rachma when you think of the Creator, when you think of neighbor, when you think of self. And by so doing, you maintain your true being. You maintain self. And then he says, for upon this hangs the law and all the prophets. In other words, when you have that condition in your mind, then you'll be able to look at the law and the prophets. You'll be able to look at all of that, and it will all make sense, because you won't be reading it through the brain cells of carbon-based memory. You'll be experiencing it directly via the activity of love within yourself, through your connection to active present love. And this idea of righteousness, it's the proper use of energy, right useness, that to use that energy that comes through us in service to the presence of love, in service to human life, becomes a key. So John spoke of him and said, this is the true one, he who it was said would come after me, but he's the same as the one who was before me, because he was before me. And from his fullness we all partook. And this community of love stood for heavenliness, or the presence of love. Well, the law, Mimosa, was given through Moses. Absolute truth and this community of love came through Yeshua. So some rules and regulations came through. But then the presence of love, you look at Moses, and he's still fighting to get out of a state of hostility and fear, terror and trauma, human sacrifice, all kinds of crazy things, escaping from that. So he does not have an instrument that's capable yet of bringing through the actual presence of active love. And Yeshua shows up with that capacity, with that capability. So then it goes on to say that from the time of Moses to Yeshua, man did not understand the Creator during all that time. And he who was in the embrace of the Creator, he has explained to him. So when one sets one's mind to, follows the instruction of setting the mind to Rahma, then that being the master mindset of the whole structure, then the whole structure steps into service to love rather than to stuff, rather than to pursuing power or money or whatever. So Yeshua brought forward an understanding. And sadly, about as quickly as the understanding came, the Greeks came and stole it away, and they, quote-unquote, translated. I offer they did not translate, but they interpreted virtually everything they said and turned most of it backward, where forgiveness has become pardoning. Love has become sexual athletics or self-sacrifice. And on, law has become the rule of a superior, rather than simply a description of the way the energy field called love works. So the Greeks took it over, and it's not until one is restored to the brain cells that come along with the Aramaic that all of a sudden it starts to, enlightenment comes, the whole thing lights up, and it becomes a whole different process. And then we skip to John chapter 2:12. It said, after this, he and his mother and brothers and his disciples came down to Capernaum, and they were there a few days. The Passover was near, and he went to Jerusalem. And he found a temple, those selling oxen, sheep, and dove, and the money changers were sitting there. Now, you'll notice that the Greeks who want to justify gods of rage and pain and trauma translate that now what we have is a man whose whole teaching is clearly based in love, but he's got a whip in his hand and he's beating people. This story about the temple. And the temple we're talking about, yes, there's a metaphor of him going into the actual Jewish temple, but the deeper meaning is your own structure, your own temple. So passage 15 goes on to say, and he made himself a broom, a prigla, out of strands, and drove everything of theirs, that is, those who were defiling the temple, out, the sheep and the oxen, and turned over the tables of the money changers, and their money he poured out. So he didn't go in with a whip. He didn't go in with anger. People use this, so many times over the years. I think of people, even Yeshua was angry and when he did that. It's like, no, there's nothing about anger there. There's power, there's clarity. He knows exactly what he's going to do, but he's not using a whip. He's got a prigla would be a little broom like you might back in that day when you had, tents with dirt floors that you'd sweep chickens out of the house with. Nothing to do with a whip or attack. And to those who sold doves, he said, remove these from here and do not make of my house, the house of my Father, a house of commerce. In other words, you're not designed for commercial interests. We come into the world and there's an educational system, and the educational system will do everything to convince you that you are supposed to be a good commercial servant. But that's not anyone's primary purpose. I'd offer that our primary purpose is to function as human beings and know what our individual role is in the world and to bring that into expression. And this disciple remembered that which was written, ardor for your house arouses me. And so here Yeshua is recognizing the use of the human temple is to be a fit vehicle to bring the active presence of a human life, the active presence of love to the earth. And that's what is meant by your house here. It's not about a building. And then he goes on to speak about returning to the truth of functioning as human beings. And rather than moving on to the next passage, we're down to about the last 5 minutes, I'm just going to open the question of if there's anybody out there, Miss Jeannie, with a hand up or anything happening in the chat room.
We do have a hand up.
Do we? Well, let's go for it. It's going to be a quick one, but let's see what's happening.
Susan, 610.
Oh, I just got... Go for it, Susan. It just announced we have 90 seconds.
Okay. I don't need much time. I'm just loving this. That's all I wanted to say. Absolutely balm for the soul and spirit. Answering a lot of questions. Just good.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Well, that warms the cockles of my heart. Thank you.
Well, you've been warming mine. Mine are pretty hot already from the weather, but this is a different kind of warming. So how are your arms, Jeannie?
I went to the chiropractor today with Aria, and she watched them do the acupuncture. And they actually allowed her to take a couple of them out at the end of it. So it was interesting.
Whoa, what an education. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both. I didn't need to say anything except that much appreciated.
Awesome. Well, you are appreciated too.
Thanks.
And we are getting ready to go have a fun play day with Aria. She stayed with us last night, and we get to hang out with her until she heads home. And in the meantime, we appreciate everybody who joins us and hold the space for the best year yet of your eternal life. It is an awesome gift to give the